The Dallas Mavericks are in the 2024 NBA Finals. The future looks really bright with superstar Luka Doncic and a really great young core around him. However, just in a few years, the Mavericks will become one of the worst teams in the league. How did this happen? Well, we have to rewind.
The third pick in the 2018 NBA Draft, the Atlanta Hawks select Luka Doncic from Ljubljana, Slovenia, and Real Madrid.
In the 2018 draft, the Dallas Mavericks traded up for Luka Doncic in exchange for Trae Young and a future first-round pick. Luka, at this time, was one of the best prospects in the draft, just a EuroLeague MVP, and he looked like he could be one of the best players in the NBA if he reaches his potential. The Mavericks were also trying to find a person to carry the torch from Dirk Nowitzki, who was going to retire the next season, and they thought Doncic was a great fit. Also in the 2018 draft, the Dallas Mavericks picked Jalen Brunson in the second round, which would become a home run pick. In the 2018-19 season, the Dallas Mavericks were not too good, but Luka Doncic proved that he could be a superstar level player, winning Rookie of the Year, averaging 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. Meanwhile, they traded for Kristaps Porzingis, a former All-Star who tore his ACL this season, but still, he was one of the best shooters and most unique players in the league, making him a great sidekick alongside Luka Doncic. In the next season, Luka Doncic had an MVP level season already in his second season. He was All-NBA first team, averaging 29 a game, alongside 9 rebounds and 9 assists, making his first All-Star game. Luka Doncic led the team to a 43-32 record, making them qualify for the playoffs for the first time in 4 years. In this series, they had to go against Kawhi, Paul George, and the newly created Los Angeles Clippers, who were one of the title contenders of this season. But Luka and the Mavericks did not go into the matchup without a fight. In Game 1, LA won, but Dallas came back with a Game 2 win where Luka scored 28. In Game 3, they lost, but in Game 4, Luka showed his true dominance and how he is a playoff riser by scoring 43 points, including this.
Finney-Smith to inbound. Back to Doncic. Doncic pulls up, three-pointer. Bang! Bang! It's good! Doncic wins the game at the buzzer!
However, after that game winner, the Mavericks lost the next 2 games and lost the series in 6 versus the LA Clippers. But it was still a successful season as Luka showed he can lead a team to the playoffs. In the next season, Luka continued his dominance, scoring 28 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists. He was 6th in MVP, another All-NBA first team, and took the Mavericks to a 42-30 record, which solidified them in the 5th seed, where they had to go against the LA Clippers again. In this series, the Dallas Mavericks took a 2-0 lead, thanks to Luka Doncic scoring 31 and then 39 for the first 2 games, and it is thought that they would win the series. However, the LA Clippers won the next 2 games, but Luka Doncic came back with a 42-point game to win Game 5, take a 3-2 series lead, 1 more win to go to the second round. However, playoff Kawhi showed up, scoring 45 points to win Game 6 and a 28-point clincher to win Game 7. Dallas gets sent home again by the LA Clippers. In this series, Luka averaged a mind-boggling 36 points per game, 10 assists, and 8 rebounds. However, many critics believe that Luka, although he was putting up insane stats, could not lead the Mavericks to playoff wins. But that all changed in the next season. In the next season, the Dallas Mavericks again were a great team. However, Kristaps Porzingis did not like his role on the team, was feuding with the coaches, and ultimately he got traded for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans, which was a pretty small package for Porzingis. To fill his role, Jalen Brunson took a massive leap where he became another ball handler and creator with Luka Doncic, and this led them to 52 wins, where they were the 4th seed in the Western Conference, and they were going to go versus the Utah Jazz in the first round. In another note, this is the season where they hired Nico Harrison to be their next GM, the person who would ultimately ruin their franchise in the next few seasons. In the first 3 games of the series, Luka Doncic was out. But in those 3 games, the Mavericks were able to win 2 out of the 3 without Luka because of Jalen Brunson, where in Game 2 he scored 41 and in Game 3 he scored 31 to be able to lead Dallas to a 2-1 lead. And then once Luka Doncic came back, they lost Game 4 by 1, but after that, it was wraps, and the Mavericks won their first series since the championship run in 2011. In the second round, the Dallas Mavericks were heavy underdogs versus the Phoenix Suns, who won 64 games, being the best record in the league. And it showed in games 1 and 2, although Luka dropped 45 and 35, he did not have much help, and the Phoenix Suns won those games. However, in games 3 and 4, the Mavericks won with much better help from the supporting cast and Luka Doncic continuing his level of play. But then in game 5, the Mavericks got destroyed by 30, and it looked like the Phoenix Suns would win this, but Luka had other ideas.
The 4th seed Dallas Mavericks have pushed the team with the best record, the number 1 seeded Phoenix Suns, to a 7th game. Ayton is on Doncic, the dance and drive. With that patented spinner and a quick games to none. Doncic 3, good! Wow, what a start. He's hit his first 3. Under a minute to go here in the first half. Stunning. 27-point lead. Down goes Johnson. 3. Luka. Bullseye. Oh, no. They're shredding him.
Oh, no, he didn't.
In games 6 and 7, the Mavericks destroyed the Phoenix Suns, especially in game 7. Game 7, Luka Doncic scored the same amount of points as the whole Phoenix Suns team in the first half. And this was where we got the famous Chris Paul meme. The Dallas Mavericks then had to go against the Golden State Warriors, where ultimately they would lose in 5 games versus a very, very deep and well-oiled machine in the Golden State Warriors, who would ultimately win the championship that year. However, this was a success as Luka Doncic able to show that he can win playoff games despite him not having the best players around him. However, in the offseason, the Mavericks let go of Jalen Brunson as they did not want to pay him as much as the New York Knicks, and this move was a bit polarizing as Jalen Brunson had a really great playoffs the previous year, but he did not show to be a true all-star level player yet, so the Mavericks took the risk of letting him go, and in the next season, they did get another superstar to pair with Luka Doncic. The Mavericks were doing alright next season. Luka Doncic was going ballistic, averaging 34 points a game, which is insane, and 9 assists and 9 rebounds, almost averaging a triple-double in a season. And to give him some more help, Nico Harrison's first big move was to trade Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and 2 first-round picks for Kyrie Irving and Markieff Morris. Now, this was a bit of a polarizing move. Kyrie was seen as a locker room diva and had many signs that he might not be the leader that the Dallas Mavericks might need because of all the vaccine issues. So this was a big risk to get Kyrie Irving. But the reward is one of the best players in the league, a crafty guard who could score at his own will. At first, this trade looked like a miss by Nico Harrison, as the Dallas Mavericks, who were around the 5th seed during the trade deadline, fell all the way out of the play-in at the end of the season. This was trouble for them. In the offseason, the Dallas Mavericks had to make moves in order to bolster their roster around Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and they made some great moves. In the draft, the Dallas Mavericks drafted Cason Wallace, but traded him alongside Davis Bertans, which is a horrible contract that they had, for Derek Lively II, which fills a big center role they needed. They haven't had a good center since Kristaps Porzingis. And then in the offseason, they signed Dante Exum and Derrick Jones Jr., who would become great role players for their team, alongside signing Grant Williams. And around the trade deadline, the Mavericks were hovering around 500 and were the 8th seed. So Nico Harrison made 2 moves in the trade deadline that would alter their season. First, he traded Grant Williams and Seth Curry to get PJ Washington, a great 3-and-D player. And then he traded Rashawn Holmes and a first-round pick for Daniel Gafford, who is another center that the Dallas Mavericks could use, as Luka loves to play with lob threat centers such as Gafford and Lively, who they just drafted this season. With those changes, the Dallas Mavericks went on a huge 24-10 run to go 50-32, grabbing the 5th seed and looking like they could be a threat in the playoffs. In the first round, they had to go against the LA Clippers again, the 3rd time in 5 years. This time, something was different, as the Dallas Mavericks were able to beat them in 6 with great series from Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, where Luka averaged 30 points per game while Irving averaged 27. In the next series, the Dallas Mavericks were facing the young, upcoming Oklahoma City Thunder, the number 1 seed. However, it is another 6-game series again, as the Mavericks beat the Thunder in 6, where many role players stepped up this series, especially PJ Washington, who averaged 17, 8 rebounds a game, shooting exponentially well from threes, 47% from 3, and was one of the main reasons why the Mavericks won this series. But then in the next round, they had to go against Anthony Edwards, the young rising star who just beat off 2 legends in Kevin Durant and Nikola Jokic, but they weren't ready for this Luka Doncic. In Game 1, Luka scored 33 for the Mavericks to win, but Game 2, it was over for the Timberwolves.
Gobert's out there. Doncic maneuvers for the lead. Got it! What a shot!
After that game, the Timberwolves lost again in Game 3, Mavericks taking a 3-0 lead and ultimately winning in 5 as the Mavericks headed to their first NBA Finals since the 2011 NBA season. In the way of the championship was the Boston Celtics, who clearly was the best team in the league, including Luka's former teammate Kristaps Porzingis, alongside Tatum, Brown, Jrue Holiday, and Derek White. Although Luka Doncic still put up pretty good stats in this series, he didn't have much help from Kyrie Irving and his role players, and the Dallas Mavericks lost in 5. Even though the Mavericks lost this series, they were seen to be a very good team in the future because they still have Luka, who is a young, budding superstar. He was still only 25 at this point. They had a great young core around him, including PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, Derrick Jones Jr., Kyrie Irving was older, but still had many years in his prime. And they looked like the only team who could possibly beat the OKC Thunder, who we all knew was going to become an insane team. But Nico Harrison came and made the worst decision in NBA history.
What? No, wait. No, that's all.
In the offseason after the finals, the Dallas Mavericks lost Derrick Jones Jr. to free agency, but they actually looked like they improved their roster, adding Klay Thompson, a 4-time champion and another great shooter for the Mavericks, and then Najee Marshall to replace Derrick Jones Jr. and Quentin Grimes, traded for Tim Hardaway Jr., who was inconsistent in the finals, to add another younger player that could possibly have good potential. In the season, up to December, the Mavericks were looking like another playoff contender, being around the 4th seed, but then Luka got injured, which made the Mavericks stumble a little down to play-in territory. But then trade deadline came and Nico Harrison did something that he will regret for the rest of his life.
Breaking news on SportsCenter this morning, the Lakers and Mavericks making it a blockbuster night. Luka Doncic headed to the Lakers, Anthony Davis headed to the Mavericks in a seismic trade that shakes up the reigning Western Conference champion Mavs and gives LeBron James in Los Angeles, a 25-year-old superstar who's been All-NBA first team for 5 straight years.
Luka Doncic got traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis and Max Christie. This was a horrible move already from the start, as Luka Doncic was one of the top 5 players in the league, a generational talent that you never trade. This is like trading Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Bucks, like trading Anthony Edwards from the Timberwolves, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the Thunder. No one would do that. But the Mavericks did this because they wanted to build a defensive identity, bringing in Anthony Davis, who Nico Harrison has ties with from the Olympics and Nike. And then they thought Luka is an injury-prone player who was out of shape, as he always came into training camp out of shape. They were worried that he, being out of shape, cannot lead the Mavericks to an NBA championship. So bringing in AD would fortify their defense along Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, where he could play the power forward position alongside with Kyrie Irving. Offense would be a solid team. In the first game, when Anthony Davis was a Maverick, the Mavericks looked pretty good against the Houston Rockets. However, this happened.
Oh, Anthony Davis went down to get hit in the midsection.
Şengün, and remember that Davis just missed time with an abdominal injury.
Anthony Davis got hit with an injury that sidelined him for most of the season. And in March, with all the mileage that Kyrie was holding on, averaging the most minutes in the league, Kyrie tore his ACL, ending his season effectively and ending the hopes of the Dallas Mavericks to even have a chance in the playoffs.
Second pick will be made by the San Antonio Spurs. That means that the number 1 pick in the 2025 NBA draft goes to the Dallas Mavericks.
Somehow, in the draft lottery, when they missed the playoffs, the Dallas Mavericks got the number 1 overall, which means they were able to get Cooper Flagg, a generational talent from Duke, who was already going to look like one of the best defensive players in the league. And if his offense becomes polished, he will become one of the best players in the league. The Mavericks truly lucked out, since they only had a 1.8% chance to win the lottery. In the offseason, the Mavericks signed D'Angelo Russell, and they looked like a pretty good team on paper, with offense from D'Lo, Klay Thompson, and a lot of depth like Max Christie, Caleb Martin, Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, alongside with Brandon Williams, and Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, who would come back around December, January to lead the Mavericks. So many people predicted the Mavericks to actually make the playoffs this season, as they also had Cooper Flagg, who many people thought would become automatically an impact player in his first season. However, their season has been a disaster. 5 games into the season, Anthony Davis already has gotten injured. They made Cooper Flagg try to be a point guard in his first game of the season, instead of being his known position as a small forward or power forward, because they didn't even have a good point guard to play. Klay Thompson and D'Angelo Russell look washed and cannot really score on offense. Their offense in general has been putrid, being the worst offensive rating in the league by far. Even though their defense has been the top 5 defense in the league, it does not matter, as they're the 13th seed in the Western Conference currently, one of the worst teams in the league. While Luka Doncic is going crazy on the Lakers, who is one of the best teams in the league, he has lost a lot of weight, been in shape, has not really gotten injured this season. While this disastrous season was starting, the Mavericks fans started to chant as their general manager Nico Harrison has made awful moves left and right in the past year. And finally, the Mavericks owners caved in and fired Nico Harrison, ending this tumultuous era. Now, the Mavericks are already trying to possibly trade Anthony Davis, the player they got back for Luka Doncic, in which they will not get much in return, as it seems the Mavericks are looking into a full rebuild. With Cooper Flagg and a possible lottery pick this season, the Mavericks look like they have a solid future, but they don't own any of their picks until 2031 after this season, which will definitely halt their progress in building a good roster around Cooper Flagg. But with the amount of veterans they have, they could probably trade them for some solid returns, and hopefully they can finally build a great team around someone and not trade their generational talent. That's basically it. Thank you guys for watching. We're out.